Hello, and welcome to the first lesson in the course Moving Past the Basics. Today we'll be covering an introduction to tactics. So what are tactics? Tactics are a sequence of moves or a combination that forcibly results in a tangible gain. This gain is usually materialistic, and this is what we'll be covering. So the first basic tactic I want to cover is the fork. Now, a fork is when you attack two or more pieces at the same time. The idea is the opponent can only defend one with this move. So to start us off with a very basic fork, let's cover this position. Now white is attacking f7 two times with his bishop on c4 and his knight on g5. Now when the knight captures on f7, he ends up attacking two pieces at the same time, the queen on d8 and the rook on h8. Now, black has to decide which one he wants to lose, because on his next move, white will be able to take the piece that he did not defend. So, naturally, as the queen is worth more than the rook, once black moves the queen, white can capture the rook. So, this is a case where a fork leads to a material gain. So, a knight is not the only piece that can fork, although it is the most common. Other pieces that can fork are, say, a pawn. So if I have a very basic position, such as this, black can make a mistake by playing his bishop here onto e6, where white would be able to fork the knight and the bishop by pushing his pawn to d5. Now he can only move one of these pieces, and the other one will be captured, resulting again in a material gain. Now, the next tactic I want to cover is the pin. And I'm sure you can visualize a pin or the physical object. And it's simply when you pin a lesser valued piece to a more valuable piece. Now, what do I mean by that? So I'm going to give you a very basic example of a pin. So here in this position, this knight is pinned to the queen. And it's pinned in the sense that it cannot move. The knight is the lesser valued piece and the queen is the more valuable piece, because if the knight moves, then he ends up losing his queen, which he doesn't want to let happen. So how is the pin a tactic? Right here, it doesn't seem like much is going on, but let's see what happens if black makes a few careless moves. If he's not careful, then white can utilize this pin to win a piece. So as you know, this knight cannot move. Therefore, if you attack it with a lesser valued piece, you could gain material. And this is exactly what white does in this position. By pushing his pawn to e5, he attacks this knight on f6. And this knight can't move anywhere. Can't go to e4, can't go to g4, cannot go to h7, can't go to g8, because the queen is pinned. And as the queen is worth 9 points, and the knight is only worth 3 points, he'd rather lose the knight. And nevertheless, this is a gain for white, because he loses a pawn for a knight, or 1 point or 3 points. So if black makes a move, for example, white can capture the knight and gain material. Now the next tactic is very similar to the pin. It's called a skewer. And when I imagine a skewer, I think of like a shish kebab, like skewering a bunch of meat. And it's quite similar to the visual imagery you might get from a pin. But the difference between a pin and a skewer is that in a skewer, the more valuable piece is in front of the less valuable piece. In the pin, you saw that the knight was pinned to the queen, so less valuable to more valuable, and it's the opposite for a skewer. So let me set up a very basic position in which you might see a skewer. So, something very simple. Something like this. In this position, this queen is skewered to the rook. The queen is the more valuable piece. The rook is the less valuable piece. So the queen is worth 9 points and the rook is worth 5 points. And here, the queen must move away. Of course, he can try to block the attack, but let's say white just captures it. Now, he has the more valuable piece here on c6, the queen, so naturally he wants to move that away. But once he moves it away, then white can capture the rook, again, resulting in material gain. So a skewer is similar to the pin, except now black is obligated to move the pin piece. In the other example, black was reluctant to because the more valuable piece was behind the pin. So that's the skewer. Now, those are the tactics I want to cover for today, but I wanted to leave you on the note that keep in mind that these tactics aren't standalone. As a matter of fact, tactics are often mixed together, so you could have a pin followed by a skewer, and these two tactics would constitute a combination that could result in some sort of tangible gain. And you'll practice this after the video. Thank you for watching this video. Tactics are quite enjoyable. I hope you have fun completing the exercises.